Hello, I am Mike.
Hello, I am Lily. Welcome to English Podcast Flow.
Our episode today is How to Learn English by Yourself in a Lazy Way.
That's right. And a lot of people think that learning English has to be really difficult.
Yeah, like you have to spend hours every day with textbooks.
Right. Or, going to classes and things like that.
Yeah, and it can feel like a chore.
It can. And actually, studies show that many people find traditional methods of language learning
Yeah,
overwhelming.
totally overwhelming.
But what if I told you that there is a more relaxed way to learn English?
A lazy way, even.
A lazy way, exactly.
Okay, so first of all, can we really call it lazy if we're still learning?
Well, I guess lazy is maybe not the best word.
Yeah,
But it's more about integrating English into your everyday life in a way that feels natural and enjoyable,
I like that.
rather than making it the separate chore that you have to do.
So like not making it a separate thing on your to-do list, but just kind of weaving it in to
Exactly.
your everyday life.
So it becomes more of a habit, a natural part of your day.
Okay, so how do we actually do that?
Well, one of the best ways is through something called passive learning.
Passive learning.
Passive learning, yeah. And this is really powerful because it leverages the way that we naturally learn languages.
Okay, give me an example.
Think about how you learned your first language.
Oh, okay.
You didn't sit down with your parents and have them explain grammar rules to you.
No, not at all. I don't think my parents even knew the grammar rules.
Exactly. You learned by being immersed in the language, by hearing it constantly.
Yeah, just by listening and absorbing it.
Right, by listening to your parents, by watching TV.
By listening to music.
Exactly, all those
Just
things.
absorbing it all the time.
And your brain just naturally started to pick up the patterns and the sounds.
So you're saying we can kind of do the same thing with English?
Exactly. And studies show that this is actually a very effective way to learn.
Really? So even if I'm not actively studying,
Even if you're not actively studying,
just by surrounding myself with English,
my brain is still going to be learning.
it's still picking things up.
It's still picking things up. That's the idea. And it might sound a little bit too good to be true.
Yeah, it does sound a little bit too good to be true.
But there's actually a lot of research that supports it.
Okay, so tell me some ways that I can passively learn English then.
Well, one of the easiest and most enjoyable ways is to listen to music in English.
Okay, I do that already.
You probably already do that.
I love music.
Exactly. So you're already on the right track. Just put on your favorite English language artists
Okay.
and let the music wash over you.
And I don't even have to really be paying attention.
You don't have to be analyzing the lyrics or anything like that.
Just let it play in the background.
Just let it play in the background, and your brain will be doing the work subconsciously.
My brain is secretly learning English while I'm listening to my favorite music.
Exactly. And another great way is to watch movies and TV shows in English.
Okay, I already do that too.
You probably do that too.
Yeah, I love watching movies.
Exactly. And again, it's something that you're already doing.
So I can kind of kill two birds with one stone.
Exactly. You're relaxing, you're enjoying yourself, and at the same time, you're learning English.
Okay, so are there any tips for doing that? Because sometimes I feel like I put on a movie in English
Yes,
and I'm just reading the subtitles and I'm not really paying attention.
that's a good point. So try starting with movies or TV shows that you've already seen in your native language
Okay?
so that you already know the plot.
So I'm not really focused on the plot. I can focus on the language.
Exactly. Because if you already know the plot, then you can really focus on listening to the language,
Okay.
paying attention to how the actors are pronouncing the words, the intonation, and things like that.
So maybe like start with my favorite movie, put it on in English.
Exactly.
Maybe I'll do the subtitle in English too so I can kind of read along if I miss something.
That's a great idea. And you can also start with putting the subtitles in your native language.
Oh, okay.
And as you get more comfortable,
Switch them to English.
you can switch them to English, or you can even try watching without subtitles.
Ooh, that's advanced.
That's the goal ultimately, but start with whatever feels comfortable for you.
Okay, so music, movies. Those are all great passive things I can do.
Yes.
Are there other things I can do to kind of passively learn English?
Well, another one that's becoming increasingly popular is listening to podcasts in English.
Okay, so this is a podcast.
Yes.
It's kind of meta.
Exactly. So if you're listening to this podcast right now, you're already doing it.
I'm already learning.
You're already passively learning English.
Okay, so find podcasts on topics that I'm interested in.
Exactly. So whatever your interests are, whether it's business or science,
History,
true crime,
whatever it is.
you can find a podcast about it.
There's a podcast for everything.
Exactly.
Okay, so music, movies, podcasts.
Yes.
This is all sounding pretty good so far.
Good. And the great thing about these activities is that you can do them while you're doing other things.
Okay.
So you can listen to music while you're cooking,
Yeah, while I'm cleaning.
while you're cleaning, while you're exercising.
Yeah.
You can have a podcast playing in the background while you're working if your job allows it.
Yeah, so really, anytime I'm doing something else, I can have English playing in the background.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of passive learning.
My brain is always working.
It's always working even when you're not consciously focused on it.
Okay, so what about active learning then? because I do want to make sure I'm not just passively learning.
Yes, active learning is important too.
I want to actively improve my English as well. We talked a lot about passive learning.
Right, all those things that you can do to kind of surround yourself with English.
Just kind of absorb it naturally.
Exactly, without even really trying.
So things like watching movies, listening to music.
Listening to podcasts.
Yeah, even just changing your phone settings
Yes, that's a good one.
to English.
Exactly, and it appears that all of these things can really make a difference over time.
They do. It's amazing how much our brains can absorb just by being exposed to the language.
It is, and it's kind of like how we learned our first language.
Yeah, just by hearing it all the time.
Right, our brains are naturally wired to pick up patterns and sounds.
And the more we hear a language, the better we get at understanding it.
Exactly, even if we don't understand every single word.
Right? Our brains are still working in the background, kind of figuring things out.
Exactly, so passive learning is a great foundation.
It is,
But we also need to incorporate some active learning techniques.
to really solidify our understanding.
Exactly, to take it to the next level.
Okay, so what are some active learning techniques that we can use that still align with this lazy approach?
Well, one technique that's really effective for improving your listening comprehension is called active listening.
Active listening. Okay, so that sounds kind of counterintuitive to being lazy,
It does sound a bit counterintuitive.
because you have to actively do something.
You do, but it doesn't have to be a lot of effort.
Okay, so what exactly is active listening?
So it's basically about engaging with what you're hearing,
Okay,
not just letting the sounds wash over you passively.
so like really paying attention,
Exactly, really focusing on what's being said,
trying to understand the meaning.
the nuances, the emotions behind the words.
Okay, so it's more than just having English playing in the background.
Right? It's about being present and attentive to the language.
Okay, so I get that that's important, but it sounds like it requires a lot more concentration than just passive listening.
It does require a bit more focus, but here's the lazy part.
Okay, I like the lazy part.
You don't have to do it for hours on end.
Okay, good.
You can start with just short, manageable chunks of listening.
Okay, so like 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Exactly. Maybe even just 1 minute if that's all you have time for.
So instead of trying to actively listen to an entire movie, I could just pick like a short YouTube video.
Exactly. Or a podcast episode.
Or a song even.
Or a song, exactly. And while you're listening, try to identify keywords and phrases.
Okay,
Pay attention to the speaker's intonation and tone of voice.
okay.
And see if you can follow the main points of the conversation.
So I'm really tuning into all those subtle cues that convey meaning in spoken English.
Exactly. And as you practice active listening, your brain will naturally become more adept at picking up on these cues.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's kind of like training my ears to be more sensitive to the nuances of the language.
Exactly. And you can do it anywhere, anytime.
So I could do it while I'm cooking dinner, while I'm going for a walk.
While you're commuting to work, while you're taking a shower.
Exactly. It's like sneaking in little bits of learning throughout the day.
Exactly.
Okay, active listening is definitely going on my list of lazy learning techniques.
Good.
Now let's talk about speaking, because I know that's something that a lot of people struggle with.
Yes, speaking is often the most challenging part of language learning.
It is, because you have to actually put yourself out there.
You have to be vulnerable. You have to make mistakes.
And it can feel really intimidating.
It can, but it's also one of the most rewarding parts of language learning.
It is, because it's when you can actually use the language to communicate with other people.
Exactly.
So do you have any tips for kind of overcoming that fear of speaking?
Well, one tip that we talked about in the last episode is talking to yourself in English.
Right, our imaginary friend.
Exactly, and it might sound a little silly,
It does sound a little silly.
but it's actually a really effective way to practice.
I've been trying it, and it's kind of fun.
It is kind of fun, and it helps you to get more comfortable with the sounds of the language.
So I'm not as scared to actually speak it out loud to another person.
Exactly, and you can practice forming sentences, you can experiment with new vocabulary.
Okay, so are there any ways to make this technique even more effective?
Well, one way is to record yourself speaking.
Record myself.
Yes, I know it sounds a little scary,
It does.
but it can be really helpful.
Okay, so how would that help?
Well, it allows you to step back and listen to yourself objectively,
Okay.
so you can hear how you sound to other people.
And identify areas where I can improve.
Exactly, like your pronunciation, your fluency, the overall flow of your speech.
So it's like having a personal speech coach,
Exactly,
but without the cost.
but without the cost, and you can do it in the privacy of your own home.
Okay, so I choose a topic, I set a timer, I just speak freely, and then I listen back.
Exactly.
And try to be objective about it.
Exactly, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, because everyone makes mistakes when they're learning a new language.
Is part of the process.
It's part of the process. The important thing is to be able to identify those mistakes and use them as opportunities for growth.
Okay, I like that. So it's not about being perfect, it's about being aware of the areas where I can improve.
Exactly.
Okay, now I know you said we're going to talk about technology, and I'm really excited about this topic.
Yes, technology can be a really powerful tool.
It can be for learning English in a lazy way. And I'm a big tech nerd, so I love using technology for everything.
Me too. And it's amazing how much technology can enhance language learning.
It really is, and especially for this lazy approach that we've been talking about.
Exactly, because technology can make learning English so much easier and more fun.
It can, and it can also make it more accessible.
Definitely.
Like, you don't have to go to a physical class. You don't have to buy expensive textbooks.
You can learn from anywhere in the world at any time.
Exactly. So let's talk about some specific ways that we can use technology to learn English the lazy way.
Okay, so one of the most exciting developments in recent years has been the rise of personalized language learning apps.
Personalized language learning apps. Tell me more about that.
So these apps use artificial intelligence to basically create a customized learning experience for you.
So it's like having a personal tutor in your pocket.
Exactly. They track your progress, they identify your strengths and weaknesses, and they adjust the curriculum accordingly.
So it's always giving me content that's at the right level for me.
Exactly. So you're not bored because it's too easy.
Right, and you're not overwhelmed because it's too hard.
Exactly. It finds that sweet spot.
That's awesome. So it really takes the guesswork out of language learning.
It does. It's really good. So are there any specific apps that you recommend?
I'm glad you asked because there are a few that I really like.
Okay, let's hear it.
So one is called Duolingo.
Oh, I've heard of Duolingo.
Yeah, Duolingo is really popular. It's kind of like a game.
It is gamified learning. It's really fun.
Yeah, it's very addictive.
It is. You get those little rewards and those points, and it keeps you motivated.
Exactly, and it's really good for learning vocabulary and grammar.
It is, and it's also really good for just getting into the habit of practicing every day.
Yeah, because it gives you those little reminders.
Those little nudges.
Yeah, come back and practice your English.
Exactly. Another one that I really like is Babbel.
Babbel? Okay, I've heard of that one too.
Yeah, Babbel is a bit more comprehensive than Duolingo. So it covers a wider range of topics.
So if I'm maybe a little bit more advanced.
Exactly. It might be a better choice.
Okay, cool. And is there a third one?
There is a third one that I like. It's called Memrise.
Memrise.
Memrise is really good for learning vocabulary.
Okay.
It uses a lot of mnemonics and visuals.
So it helps you remember the words better.
Exactly. It makes it more memorable.
I like that, Memrise.
So those are just a few examples of personalized language learning apps.
Okay, great. And I think a lot of these have free versions too.
They do. Most of them have free versions, so you can try them out and see which one you like best.
Okay, perfect. And then another really great technology resource for learning English is podcasts.
Oh, yes. Podcasts are amazing.
They are, and obviously we're doing a podcast right now.
Exactly. So you're already listening to a podcast.
I'm already learning.
You're already practicing your English.
But there are so many other great podcasts out there.
There are thousands and thousands.
You can find podcasts on literally any topic that you're interested in.
Exactly. So whether you're interested in news or science or history or comedy.
True crime.
True crime, exactly.
Sports, whatever it is, there's a podcast out there for you.
Exactly. And the great thing about podcasts is that you can listen to them while you're doing other things.
Yeah, like passive listening that we were talking about before.
Exactly. So you can be commuting to work, you can be exercising, you can be cooking dinner.
And you're learning English at the same time.
Exactly. So it's a really efficient way to learn.
It is, and a lot of podcasts also have transcripts available.
They do, which is really helpful.
So if you're listening to a podcast and you hear a word that you don't understand,
you can just look it up in the transcript.
Exactly. And you can also read along with the transcript while you're listening.
Which can really help to improve your comprehension.
It can. So podcasts are definitely a must for any lazy English learner.
Agreed. Okay, so we've talked about apps, we've talked about podcasts.
What else is there?
Well, another really great resource that often gets overlooked is YouTube.
YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube.
I always think of YouTube as just a place to watch like funny cat videos.
Yes, there are plenty of cat videos on YouTube.
But it's also a great resource for learning English.
It is. There are tons of channels that are specifically designed for English language learners.
Really?
Yeah, you can find everything from grammar lessons to vocabulary explanations to pronunciation tutorials.
Wow. So it's like having a fifi English teacher.
Exactly, and you can learn at your own pace.
You can pause, you can rewind, you can watch it as many times as you need to.
Exactly, and you can also find channels that are focused on specific aspects of English.
So if I want to learn about American slang,
you can find a channel for that.
if I want to learn about British idioms,
there's a channel for that too.
Okay, YouTube is officially on my list now.
Good, I'm glad to hear it.
This is great. So apps, podcasts, YouTube.
And then one last thing I want to mention is the importance of community.
Community. Okay, how does that tie into technology?
Well, technology has made it so much easier to connect with other English language learners.
Okay, so I'm not just learning by myself.
Exactly. You can join online forums,
Social media groups,
language exchange apps.
where I can talk to other people.
Exactly. You can practice your English. You can get feedback from others.
And you can make friends from all over the world.
Exactly. And having that support system can really make a big difference.
It can. It's so motivating to know that you're not alone in this journey.
Exactly. And it makes the whole process more fun.
It does. Okay, so that's a really important point to remember. Community is key.
Yes, absolutely.
So we've covered a lot of ground in these 3 episodes.
We've talked about passive learning, active learning, and technology.
And community.
And community, the 4 pillars of lazy English learning.
Exactly. And I think the main takeaway is that learning English doesn't have to be difficult or boring.
It doesn't. It can be fun, and it can be integrated into your everyday life.
And technology can make it even easier.
Exactly. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by traditional methods of language learning,
Just remember the lazy approach.
yes, embrace the lazy approach.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining me on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
I've learned so much.
I'm glad, and I hope our listeners have too.
I hope so too. And if you're listening out there, we would love to hear from you.
Yes, let us know what your favorite lazy English learning techniques are.
And until next time, happy learning.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. It really helps our channel grow and reach more English learners like you. By subscribing, you'll never miss a new episode, and by liking the video, you're letting us know you want more helpful content. Thank you for your support. It means so much to us.